In this video, I'm going to be going over installing multiple instances of Klipper onto the BTT Pad7, which is based on the CB1 compute module that is popular in all of the BTT Klipper solutions, such as the Pi 4B adapter, the BTT Pi, and the BTT Manta series of control boards. This process will be very similar on other computers and Linux devices, so follow along if you're interested in learning more about it. In my case, I'll be setting up an instance of Klipper to run my Elegoo Neptune 2, my Elegoo Neptune 3, and my Sovol SVO7 Plus. Now you may be wondering why anyone would want to do this. For starters, running multiple instances gives you the ability to run multiple printers from a single device. It cleans up some of the clutter from your work area by eliminating multiple screens, sometimes allowing you to put your printers closer together, and the ability to eliminate proprietary versions of Klipper and maintain all of the installations on a single device eliminates the need to maintain varying versions across multiple Linux platforms. This is seen primarily on my Sovol SVO7, which uses a Sovol-flavored version of Klipper on proprietary hardware. Being able to decouple machines from factory firmware and run them on more robust and readily available hardware is always a good idea for the sake of the useful life of the product, because don't think for 1 second that you'll be able to find replacement screens for this printer 3 or 4 years down the road. You will need a couple of things before you get started. For one, you'll need to create Klipper firmware binaries just in case your binary is too old for the version you wish to install. This can be easily done through the Make Menu Config program inside of Klipper, as long as you have the correct information for creating the binary. You'll need the printer.cfg and all associated CFG files that go with your current installation to make connecting back up to your printer a little easier, and finally, having a program such as WinSCP to access the device's file system is very helpful because some of the files will open in Fluid and Mainsail as read-only and will not be able to be modified. Having a program like WinSCP is very helpful in this case. Okay, so all I've done so far is I've burned the CB1 image onto a new SD card, and this is going to be BigTree specific, but I'm going to go into the boardenv.txt and make sure that my SPI overlay 1_1 is active by uncommenting this line right here. I'll do a file, save. I shouldn't have to change anything else inside of here. Close that out, and then I'll open up the system.cfg. Before I get started, I'll change the host name of the device, and I'm going to call this BTT Pad7. I'm going to keep the keystone angle set to normal, so I won't have to change that. Here, I uncomment the time zone, change this to America/new_York. And right here is where you would put your Wi-Fi information. You put your SSID and your password. Here I'll change the BTT Pad7 to on, which with the stock installation will give me some of this stuff here, but because we're going through the multiple instances, this may or may not work very well. I have run into a little bit of an issue where the touch sound, regardless of whether it's set to off or on, has not been producing sound, so full disclosure on that. I haven't tried either of the other ones. I just let the screen time out after a little while and go off. I don't worry about the auto brightness because I just prefer a bright screen no matter what. So those are really the only changes I'm going to make here. I'll save this. And now I have to put the SD card into the Pad7, power it up, and then I can SSH into it. So I've put the SD card into the device, powered it up, and now I should be able to at least ping it by going to ping BTT-Pad7. Hit enter, and we can see right here it's getting a reply, so I'm on the network and we're ready to move forward. At this point, we can SSH into the device by either using Windows Command Prompt or Windows PowerShell, or if you wanted to use a program like PuTTY, you can use that as well, but I like using the command prompts. There are a couple of ways that you can SSH into the device with command prompt. I've showed a few times where you can do SSH, the device name or IP address, and then use a -L with the username right after it. But another shorthand way of doing it would be to type in SSH and then put the username and then an @ symbol, and then you can put in the host name or you can put in the IP address. Hit enter, and now it's going to ask you if you want to register it into the SSH list. Hit yes, and then we'll put in the password, and now we're inside of the CB1. So now the CB1 does not have the KIA script installed by default, so what we have to do is we have to go to the KIA GitHub page. So I go to Google search, and I will type in KIA GitHub, click on the first link, and now basically all we have to do is copy and paste these 3 lines into this SSH command prompt right here. The first one isn't really necessary because Git is already installed. So we basically have to copy and paste step 2 and step 3 by clicking on this little copy icon right here, going back to our command prompt, and then right click, which will paste the information in. Hit enter, go to the next one, here, right click, and now we're inside the KIAUH script. So at this point, what we're going to want to do is basically uninstall everything that's already been installed. So I'm going to uninstall Klipper, I'm going to uninstall Moonraker, I'm going to uninstall Mainsail and KlipperScreen just to start out fresh. So I'm going to go to option number 3, which is remove. I'm going to go 1 for remove Klipper. Then I'm going to go to 2 and remove Moonraker. And then 3 for Mainsail. 4 just in case the Mainsail config is still there. There is no fluid. I'll uninstall KlipperScreen. Now your mileage may vary with those. You may be able to get away with keeping them, but let's start out fresh. So from here, I'll hit back. And we can see that nothing is installed except for Crow's Nest, and I don't use that, so I will remove that too. So now I've got a nice clean slate here. I'm going to go to install option number 1, put in my password. Now I'm going to install Klipper with the Python 3.x version, and I'm going to install 3 instances. The BTT Pad7 has 3 usable USB ports, so I can use 3 instances. The CB1 and the Pi4B both have 4, and there is a chance that the CB1 will be able to handle 4 printers as long as you don't have webcams and things like that set up. And there's even a chance that you can run more than that, but I've only got 3 that I would be running off of this device anyway, so I'm going to set up 3. In practice, it's actually pretty good to always have multiple instances running anyway, because if in the future you get extra printers and you want to run them off of the same device, this would prevent you from having to go through these steps numerous times if you install enough instances to at least to take up the amount of usable USB ports that you have on your device. It'll ask you if you want to assign custom names, and in this case I will. So the name for number 1 will be Elegoo Neptune 2. Second one will be Elegoo Neptune 3. And the fourth one will be Solval SV07 Plus. And now we just let this do the installation, and when it's done, we will come back. Okay, now that that's finished, we're going to go in and install Moonraker. And it's going to ask us how many instances we want to install for that. And we're going to have to install 3 instances because that's how many Klipper instances we're running. So it automatically defaults to 3 down here. So just hit enter, type yes, and again, just let it do its thing. Okay, now that we're done there, we'll just go and install Mainsail. It'll ask if I want to install the recommended macros. In my case, I'm not going to, but in your case, you may want to. And then I'll install KlipperScreen. If you want to install Fluid as well, depending on which one you install first, you can install Mainsail on the default port, which is port 80. And when you install Fluid, when it asks you for which port you want to use, you can use port 81 or you can use port 5000 or vice versa. If you install Fluid first, then you would have to do the same thing to Mainsail. You'd have to give it port 81 or port 5000. Okay, so now that everything else is installed, while we're here, we're going to go back 1 screen. Then I'm going to go into the advanced page, number 4, and install the G-code shell command, which is option number 8. And that will allow me to use the shell commands that are in the Solval SV07. From there, hit back, and then quit. And now we should be able to get everything set up to actually run the multiple instances and see them on the Pad 7. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load WinSCP. So go Start menu, WinSCP. I'm going to start a new session. Hostname BTT-Pad7. Username of BQ, password of BQ. I'll hit Update. So now you'll see right here, I've got 3 folders. One of them is labeled Solval SV07 plus underscore data. The next one is Elegoo Neptune 3 underscore data. The other one is Elegoo Neptune 2 underscore data. There is a folder called printer underscore data. And the one thing that I do like to do, even though it's not being used, just go into there, go under config. And the moonraker.conf file, just rename that to moonraker, something like underscore unused. That'll prevent this configuration file from being read and possibly taking over any of the other Moonraker config files that we have to put into or change in the additional instances. Not that I've seen it be the case, but you never know. So inside of each of these, we have to double check and make sure that the port configurations are okay. So I'll go under Elegoo Neptune 2, config, and then moonraker.conf. Double click on that, and we'll see that the port number is 7125. I'll close that out. Go to here. I'll go back. Go to Elegoo Neptune 3, config, Moonraker config, and then you can see right here the port is 7126. Go to the Sovel folder, config, and we'll see right here that the port number is set to 7127. So chances are this should all be pretty hunky-dory to get ourselves up and going. So I should be able to go to web browser and then go to the address btt-pad7.local. And we can see right here, it's asking us to add our printers. So I'll hit add printer. The host name for the first printer will be BTT Pad7. They'll actually all be BTT Pad7. We will just have to change the port number for each of the instances. So I'll go add printer there. Add printer again. BTT-Pad7. Change port to 7126. Add printer again. BTT-Pad7. Port number 7127. Add printer, and now we've got all of our 3 printers. If we select the first one, we'll see up here that we have a button called printers, and there's also going to be a drop down right here that lets us choose between the 3 printers. So we know that 7125 is the Neptune 2. So I'll go through and I'll name that real quick. I'll go to the gear and I'll say Elegoo Neptune 2. And then under control, I'll choose the cross because I prefer that interface. And now from here, it's just a matter of loading the printer CFG for this particular printer and then just repeating it on the other 2 printers. So I still have my WinSCP session open. I'm going to go to the Elegoo Neptune 2 folder, config. And I have all the configs for each of my printers saved onto my computer. So I'm going to go into my Neptune 2 config folder, grab the printer CFG, and just drag it over. It'll ask me if I wish to overwrite, so I'll say yes. I'll go up 2 levels here. I'll go into my Neptune 3 config. Same thing here. Up 2 levels, Neptune 3 config. Grab the printer CFG, just drag it over, overwrite that one. Up, Sovel SV07. Here, 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 here. Now, here I have to drag in 2 of the CFG files for the SV07. If you watch my SV07 video from last week, you'll know that there are 2 config files that get placed into the config folder, one for the actual printer CFG and then one for the power loss recovery section. And with that, I'll also go up 1 level and I'll take the 2 script files that I have here and drag those into home/bq/sovel-sv07 plus _ data. And I'll make sure that my plr.cfg is pointed to the right folder. So I've got home bq printer 3 _ data. In this case here, it's going to be Sovel SV07 plus. I'll copy that, paste that in, save it, close it, and then go back to my web browser. So now that I've got all of the CFG files placed into each of their respective folders, I want to go into printer.cfg and make sure that all of the necessary changes are made. In the case of my virtual SD card, I have to put in Elegoo Neptune 2 because I changed the name of my data folders. I'll save and restart. And because my configuration didn't change, I really don't have to change anything else. But if I'm going from one device to another, or if I'm changing USB ports or something like that, I just have to make sure that my MCU serial section is set up correctly. And when you're doing multiple instances, you're going to want to do the dev serial by path, not by ID, because the by path actually gives you the explicit USB port location that each of the devices are pointed to. In the case of my Neptune 2, I'm plugged into the top port on the rear, which is 1.2. The one underneath it is 1.3, and the one on the right-hand side is 1.4. If you want to double-check what your serial device is pointing at, make sure that your printer's plugged into the device. Start an SSH session. First, you can do an LS USB to see what is actually plugged in. We can see right here I've got 2 Quinheng 340 serial converters, and I don't have the Sovel SV07 plugged in, so you wouldn't see the 3rd printer on here anyway. Well, once you get validation that you've got the device plugged in, you can do an ls/dev/serial/by-path/star. And we can see right here, I've got a printer plugged into number 2 and a printer plugged into number 3. So I'll just do a save and close there. Go to my dashboard. You can see that everything fired up. I'll go to my next printer and I'll do the same thing. I'll go into the gear, put in Elegoo Neptune 3, close that, go to machine, printer.cfg. So I did have to do a little bit of reconfiguring inside of here only because I didn't have the mainsail.cfg file installed. I could have just reinstalled mainsail and included the CFG file, but I really don't like subbing out to different include files, which would make me a terrible C++ programmer because of the way that they do their housekeeping with header files and separate CPP files and things like that. But I'm a firm believer of keeping it simple, and being able to search through one file is a lot easier than having to jump into multiples. So I just copied and pasted all of the stuff that I was going to need for the 3, hit save and restart, and it comes right up. I'll do the same thing for the Sovel SV07, even though I don't have it connected as of yet. Let's go to gear here, Sovel SV07 Plus, printer.cfg. This should all be okay because it's already loaded in. The only thing I have to change now is the virtual SD card. Change that to Sovel SV07 Plus and then home/BQ because now it's on the Pad 7. And really that should be it. If I did a save and restart, then it would still come up with an error because it's not attached, but it should come up okay, all things considered. Once you've got that all working, then you have to make sure that your Klipper screen is set up for the 3 instances and the 3 printers that you want to access. So what you'll do in that case is go back to your main folder, your /home/ whatever your username is, and what you'll want to do is create a KlipperScreen.conf file, a config file. I already have one, but we can see right here that the things that you have to add are these sections right here. This printer, the name of the printer, the Moonraker host, which in this case is just the loopback address, the 127.0.0.1, and then the Moonraker port for each of the machines, 7125, 7126, and 7127. So I'm just going to take this config, I'm going to drag it over to here, and now by restarting the device, it's going to ask me to choose which printer I want to access by showing me 3 icons on the main screen. I'll choose a printer, and then I can switch between them with the little printer selection icon that's on the left-hand side. Easiest way to restart the device from my computer is to just SSH into it and say sudo reboot now. I really could have just done a sudo service KlipperScreen restart, which should basically do the same thing, but I'm just going to do a full reboot because of all the stuff that I installed. Make sure that the Pad 7 comes up nice and clean, and that I'm able to access all 3 of the printers by selecting the icons on the main screen. Okay, so let's dig a little bit deeper here. So right now I'm using the Edge browser to access the BTT Pad7, and I get this little pop-up window here for selecting the printer that I want to choose in remote mode. If I open up the printer in Chrome, it may not give me the same option. It may come back up with that, you're now in remote mode, please add a printer, blah, blah, blah. So if you want to rectify that and be able to open the devices in both of your browsers, if you're using more than one browser, the simple method to fix that is to go into WinSCP, go into the mainsail folder, open up config.json, and you have these couple of lines here that you just have to do a couple of minor tweaks to. If we just go and replace that with what we see here and change it to instances DB JSON, and under the instances array, we put hostname BTT Pad7.local port 7125, 7126, and 7127. What that will do is it will give us the same pop-up here inside of the other browsers. I'll save that real quick. But now let's say that we want to be able to access a device that already has Klipper on it, but we don't have a means of connecting to it via either a USB cable or anything like that. One thing we could do is we can set up remote access through KlipperScreen and be able to use a BTT Pad7 or any other Linux device running KlipperScreen. We'd be able to access that via Wi-Fi or just Ethernet in general. So it's actually a pretty easy thing to do inside of here. If I go into the Sovol SV07 Plus, we know that I have it set it up currently where the SV07 Plus does not connect because it's not attached via the USB cable. But if I go into the SV07 Plus _ data folder, go to config, and then under moonraker.config, if I change the server host to the IP address that my SV07 is currently on, change the port to 7125. Down here, just as an added safety, do the same thing. Under the CORS domains, put the IP address and then the port number 7125 in this format here. Save that. And then under the KlipperScreen.config, change this printer here to the same thing. If we go 192.168.1.26 and port 7125, this will give me remote access to the Sovol SV07 via Wi-Fi. I'm not using the host name for the Sovol SV07 because it's running an MKS Pi. And for some reason, MKS Pis have issues with host name resolution, so I can't resolve anything by host name with this stupid MKS unit. So I'll close that out. I have to reboot the unit. So I'll open up PowerShell, start an SSH session, do a sudo reboot now, and we'll just wait for it to come back up. And of course, because I'm impatient, I'll just sit here and ping it. I've got feedback, so I can go to my browser. And this is still pointing to the BTT Pad7.local 7127. So if I go back to WinSCP and open up that config.json file, here I have to change the host name for that. 192.168.1.26 and then port 7125. And this will give me access to the third printer inside of mainsail. So we can see right here, they all come up. Sovol SV07 Plus, Elegoo Neptune 2, Elegoo Neptune 3. If I click on the Sovol SV07 Plus, we can see right here that we have Wi-Fi access via mainsail because we made the change to our list. And if we didn't change the config.json file, this one here, we could actually just go into gear, and then under printers, we would be able to either add or remove printers here like we normally would, but now we're actually using the config.json file to bounce between the Wi-Fi and the wired connections that I have set up for the SV07. So 6 to 1, half dozen the other at this point. Now I've got remote access here, and I have remote access via the KlipperScreen itself. So my takeaways on installing multiple instances is that, well, number one, it can be a little bit tricky. There is a lot of tap dancing that you have to do with installing all of the instances of Klipper and Moonraker and making sure that you have all of the proper files and things like that. So having the proper printer CFG files and having a sample KlipperScreen.config file is basically 80 to 90% of the task. When connecting your devices and putting all the information into your printer.cfg, make sure you use /dev/serial/bypath rather than by ID to make sure that you get the right USB port. Make sure to check that your Moonraker config port numbers are correct, 7125, 7126, 7127, etc. And make sure you set up your KlipperScreen.config file properly, or else you won't be able to connect to the multiple printers using KlipperScreen. I will upload some samples to my GitHub page, so check those out at www.github.com/theferalengineer. And feel free to shoot me any messages or emails if you have any questions regarding your multiple instance setup. So that'll about do it for this video. If you liked it, throw it a thumbs up. If you like this type of content and you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to the channel. And if you got a buddy that'd be interested in this type of stuff, share with a friend because sharing is caring. Check out any affiliate links in the description below at no additional cost to you. It just puts a little bit of catnip into my kitty and it helps support my channel efforts. If you haven't done so yet and you're on that cesspool lettuce Facebook, join the group, Elegoo Neptune Series 3D Printers, Mods, Tweaks, and Improvements, where we offer 24-hour community support, do the occasional giveaway, and blatantly abuse the everyone tag. And once again, thank you to all of my Catnip contributors, both past, present, and future. Thank you for watching, and see you again soon.